We're live?
We should be live, everybody. Thank you all for joining. It is Monday. We got people from all over the world: Germany, Belgium, Netherlands, US, Canada. I hope we have some people from Brazil too. I know they've gone dark in some other areas. Got the early morning risers. No, the Australians aren't up yet. But thank you so much for coming. How is everybody today?
Fantastic.
We got CTO, we got Marty, and we got Mando. It's going to be a banger of a show. Yeah, let me show you the
good Labor Day weekend.
Yeah, Labor Day. I don't know. I still don't know if that means you take the day off or you work even harder, given the name. Anyway, this is the agenda we're going to kick in through today with the team here. And this agenda reflects what people are concerned about. This is not our agenda. This is the agenda where people are really worried. September is normally known as Rektember. Are the markets going to wreck everybody, or did we have our dip already in August with the carry trade reversal? Is Bitcoin 100K off the table? What is the impact of Fed rate cuts on crypto? What is the impact of liquidity on crypto? Even more important, what are you guys doing with your portfolios? There was a bit of a groundbreaking tweet from Mert as well. We'll talk about some more traditional tech companies getting into crypto again. More Sony news we'll talk about briefly. And a lot of people are very concerned about the outcome of the elections impacting altcoins. We know Bitcoin has been approved, it's an ETF and everything else, but what happens? People are worried, old season altcoins, etc., are dead unless things change, and a whole bunch more. And we'll also crack some breaking news. So let's start at the very top and get this going. Bitcoin concerns. People are very, very tired of the sideways action. We had the very sleepy August. We had a little bit of net inflow into the ETFs, but there's a lot of concern about market manipulation. People are frustrated. A lot of money comes in, the price doesn't go anywhere. But at the same time, a lot of money goes out and the price doesn't go anywhere. So it's like a double-edged sword. And then we'll talk about, everybody's now talking about a recession. What is the impact of a global recession on the bull run? So let's kick it off. Mando, you're top on the left. I'm going to go to you first. What do you think about these topics, ETFs, manipulation, and the effect of recession on a bull run?
Yeah, it's a little bit tough because if you've been tuning into this show for like the last 6 months, I think we've kind of said a lot of the same stuff each week. Like I think we've probably called us coming out of this a few too many times. Like it's just been a very, very tough sideways chop for a long period. If you go back to like the technicals of it, you've had ETFs generally having inflows on the whole, but you've had some technical selling from governments and Mt. Gox, which should hopefully start to turn towards the end of this year. I kind of have the same view that I've had for a little bit, that I think we would rally kind of in the second week of October, just before the election, just because I think that paints a pretty bullish picture. And I continue to think that Trump will win that election. That being said, like over this period, there's been a lot of, even last week, it felt like we could break out. We could break through 65K. There was funding was super low. There was an easy short squeeze, and we kind of just topped out. And then we've come back to this sort of level. One thing that I have noticed a little bit more over the last, let's say, 2 months is kind of the parabolic left curve trading stuff that people get into has died down pretty significantly. That was kind of dominated by meme coins, which is kind of seem to be spiraling pretty badly lower. So a lot of the sentiment is drawn towards that sort of gambling bit of the market, has not really been performing. That being said, I remain super optimistic on Bitcoin. I think that's easily going to go above 100K, and I think that probably drags the L1s with it, though I would be unsurprised to see Bitcoin dominance stay around the same level that it has, or maybe even creep up in that sort of a move. So I'm bullish mainly on Bitcoin drivers driving the whole of the market higher, and probably the election providing a tailwind potentially for policy and or maybe even some sort of Bitcoin reserve. So long term still bullish. It does feel as though the mindset and morale of traders is kind of down in the dumps. I think mainly because a lot of people are doing more of that left curve 10x style plays, which has just been a graveyard over the last 4 or 5 months.
Excellent point of view. You didn't mention liquidity, but we'll get back to that in a minute. CTO, what do you see out there right now? And unmute yourself. Unmute. How can I? There
Thank
you go.
you. Yeah, so if I can share the screen, I'll show some charts. So we're in this time capitulation period where nothing is happening. We're on the same price level as we were in the spring, and even the same price level as we were in the beginning of the year. So nothing has happened, and it's a very difficult period. It's a kind of easier to stay engaged and active when price is crashing than when nothing is happening. Here we just made lower highs, lower lows in this consolidation pattern, expanding triangle or some sort of channel. So that's the bigger picture. And last week, if stepping down on small time frames, I thought perhaps we're turning and kind of getting out of that consolidation phase. We had this kind of bullish development, but it faded out. And in the end, nothing happened, unfortunately. So we're kind of back in the exact same situation as we have been for almost half a year, or for more than half a year, actually, now. So I think that the tactic here is to not get bored and quit, because the day will come when this nothingness ends and something starts happening again. And when it does, most people will miss it. So that's my take on the market right now. Looking at the macro picture, I mean, there is a legit breakdown of the yields. There is no doubt about it. If we're looking on the weekly time frame, this whole area really broke down. And if stepping down on shorter time frames, we see further indications that this chart is going lower. The previous support turning into resistance and breaking down. So I see nothing else than yields dropping lower from here, which usually is positive for speculative assets like Bitcoin, like stocks here. But we're not seeing it yet. Really, stocks are struggling a little bit with the all-time high resistance. Bitcoin is not doing anything, and it gets really, really boring here. But the day will end where, the day will come where this consolidation ends. That's my take on the market. And my advice would be to not, don't log out and come back 6 months too late. Stay engaged here, guys.
Exactly. And as I always say, the bond market doesn't lie. Marty, what do you see out there? I know you've been looking at liquidity like I have. Tell us how you are framing up Rektember. Are we all going to die, or is everything going to be fine?
Yeah, humans lust for narrative, and so last week we spoke about it. Every week we speak about it. What's the narrative this week? Nothing's really changed. Honestly, all that's changed is liquidity has gone up. There's more bullish news. The price continues to go sideways. Those that picked the wrong assets are down. Those that picked the right assets are up. And we're just about to enter a liquidity cycle, which we haven't seen yet. Yeah. So I always go back to the CZ quote, which I find pertinent, and that is that, some people don't deserve crypto. So they're going to shake you out. You don't deserve it. And I love that quote. And that is what he's doing. That is what Binance does. They shake you out. If you're not ready for it, you're not going to own it. You have to. We're crypto people. We're used to this. In fact, I think this is the most stable I've ever seen Bitcoin. So I have no fear, and I try and communicate no fear. As far as going forward, this is the most bullish September ever in crypto, as far as I'm concerned.
Tell us about the bullish signals you see specifically, despite liquidity.
See, I don't focus really on the US dollar pair as much as the Bitcoin pairs. And, everything is bleeding out against this Bitcoin pair as it should. And then it's time for Bitcoin to run and lead the market. And we're just waiting for that liquidity punch to do that. I think I'd say there was around 75% chance of a V-shaped recovery. I'd say there's now probably, a 90% chance that we either see the V-shaped recovery, which is the bearish scenario where they flush every possible long they can, which will mean breaking that previous low, and then shoot up to a higher high to eliminate new longs getting in. Or we break out of the top and trap everybody's shorts, and there's $21.9 billion of shorts that will be liquidated at 72,800.
Yeah,
20 billion. So if you're a trader and you're in crypto, this is the juiciest time to be alive this month. If it does the V-shaped recovery, you're going to get a dream entry. New people get a really good entry into crypto. If it goes to the top, you long and you ride it up, and your portfolio goes up. It's all good. I think that the political narrative is bad. I think that the economic narratives of the macro are bad, and that influences crypto a little. People push in and get negative. But I mean, guys, Korean Blockchain Week is this week. Then we got Token 2049 in Singapore, right for that. Then we got Solana Breakpoint. Then we got Missouri's mainnet in New York. I mean, this month is packed full of breaking news in crypto.
We'll talk about some breaking stuff. One thing you did say, the market, I can't remember who said, I think it was Warren Buffett, famous saying, the market is a weapon that takes money from the impatient and gives it to the patient. So be patient, everybody. Now, the other big concern that everybody has right now is $100,000 Bitcoin off the table this bull run? This is another narrative I hear all the time that's part of the overarching pessimism. You know, when we were at 73,800, we weren't that far from 100K. Mando, you kicked us off saying 100K is a go. You still believe that before the end of the year or sometime in the next 12 months?
Yeah, I can paint a very, very bullish picture for Bitcoin.
Paint away.
Like, it's just in general, you can just paint a super bullish picture. Like we now have the rails with which TradFi money can come in. My personal view is we're about to see one of the greatest easing cycles, at least in terms of interest rates, that we've seen in many, many decades across pretty much every single major global economy. You're going to start to see it in China, in the US, in Europe. They just can't sustain these rates. Like they just can't. So you're about to see them all come substantially lower. I don't know if you will turn immediately to QE, but you'll definitely see, let's say, an easing of policy in tons of different countries. And Bitcoin just feels like the most obvious play for that for a lot of different people from an inflation standpoint. It's the same reason why gold just keeps on hitting an all-time high. What we have seen is indigestion of certain pockets of supply. But in a year's time, what's the supply? Like I thought about that a year ago. I could have picked a bunch of different people that could potentially be the supply. Little pockets that still had to come to market. Basically liquidations from the past cycle. Right? We had BlockFi, Celsius. We had FTX,
Genesis.
We've had Genesis. We had Germany, the US. And then finally Mt. Gox, which no one even knew when that was going to come. But you've literally gone through all the liquidations from the past cycle, plus governments, plus liquidations from 3 or 4 cycles ago. Yeah. And now I look at it and go, the top, which Marty sends out pretty much every single day, like the top holders of Bitcoin, they're not liquidations. These are generally buy and hold or longer term institutions now starting to buy Bitcoin. So I think you can paint a super bullish scenario for Bitcoin as global liquidity starts to rise. Where I do think it's a bit more risky is then translating that to the L1s. I do think we still need to show more apps. And I said that maybe a few weeks ago. I think that's why sometimes these L1 stories kind of run into a brick wall because they just they're not onboarding maybe at the speed that people think they can or would. And that requires policy in my opinion. And that's going to take a little bit more time. But Bitcoin to 100K, I think you can think a lot higher than that. Like genuinely, I think you can think a lot higher than that.
Well, this one, anybody can chime in on this one, but I did see it in Mando Minutes. Proud subscriber here. That's a great way to get updated every day. But walk us through this one. I know, Marty, you look at it. I look at liquidity. We know liquidity floats all boats. But what I loved about this ratio is if global liquidity goes up by 10%, and it's already, by my calculations, up something like 1.49 or 2.49%. I can't remember the exact number since the beginning of the year. Bitcoin goes up by 90%. You want to double click into this, Mando, real quick? You did share it after all.
Yeah, I think this is pretty basic. So it's just a play on global liquidity. The actual correlation between Bitcoin and M2 and also, let's say, more broader forms of global liquidity has been very, very strong. Over the last 10, 15 years, and particularly even when other correlations broke down, like stocks, the Bitcoin's correlation to global liquidity has been very, very high, and we are about to go on a cycle where that's happened. In fact, M2 liquidity bottom is now turning back up. I think we showed that chart probably 2 weeks ago or 1 week ago, which is why everyone's so bullish, because we're kind of already near all-time high, and global liquidity hasn't even started to ratchet up at significant strength again. So I think this is a really good spot for Bitcoin to be in. If you're really bullish on gold, it's really tough to not be bullish on Bitcoin. Like, Bitcoin is digital gold. Like, people will play that narrative very, very strongly, I think, over the coming years.
Excellent point. And we are lagging behind big time. Not only the NASDAQ, there was also a lot of historical correlation with the QQQ and to some extent with gold. But gold likes a crisis, just like Bitcoin does. And we'll see. There's another thing that just popped in here from B-Man. CTO, think about this. We'll get back to this later, but there's a question from you from B-Man out there, which I find very interesting as well. Okay, Marty, anything to add on that liquidity? Liquidity goes up 10%. Bitcoin goes up by 90%.
Yeah, I mean, it's absolutely true. And I think it's going to be more than ever. I think that's going to accelerate because, like we know, Bitcoin is now regulatory cleared in most countries. It's no longer whether it exists or will survive. It's obvious. It's already past the Lindy effect. So more liquidity will come into crypto more than ever. And the beautiful thing about Bitcoin, specifically the narrative of Bitcoin, is that any pushback against Bitcoin plays into the primary use case of Bitcoin. So it's one of those wonderful assets where any regulatory pushback plays into it. That's why you need it, right? Like Elon Musk, X gets canceled in Brazil for some ridiculous reason, and they immediately block their bank accounts for Starlink. That's Bitcoin fixes that. So any hostility from regulators, which I think we're seeing amplified now because they're the most at risk of losing power, amplifies crypto, and we're watching it in real time.
Actually, it's very interesting you say that, because that was really the question hanging. That was really the question hanging in there when Elon Musk tweeted this yesterday. Was it the day before yesterday with Brazil? And he wrote something like, we will run it free because we don't have any way to charge for it. But they kind of do have a way to charge for it with cryptocurrency. Right? So that was really like a moment to pause. Do you guys think that, and of course he knows that, other people know that, do you guys think they consider it? Because this would be the point. This would be the point to enable the feature that for sure someone in the lab has already developed, like to charge with cryptocurrency on one of the...
It's a good point. I didn't even think about it. But maybe he charges everyone in Doge to use Starlink in
there's no way Elon with his genius is not aware of everything in crypto, specifically, obviously, I think Solana. I know that Toly and Elon have a relationship. Now, the question, I mean, Elon's problem is that he's got such regulatory scrutiny on him. He's involved in so many publicly traded companies. He can't even utter the word Doge without, those stocks dumping. And so he's under a lot of pressure. But I feel like Elon Musk is getting pressured more than ever from the regulators. It's like they're poking the bear. And I don't think we've seen Musk in this phase of his life. He's definitely going to do some radical things. And I think bringing up crypto via X as a free speech technology, which it is. I mean, just putting X on blockchain solves a lot of the problems, right? I think it's going to happen, guys.
It's no secret. Like, a lot of stuff has come to light since 2020 about the suppression of narratives and information and the silencing of voices. With the global elections happening around the world, it's never become more important to have a source of truth, because we know that the media all around the world is complicit with governments. Big tech is complicit with governments. These are all proven facts. And if people do not wake up and realize, I don't want to get on a soapbox here, but it's pretty incredible. Anyway, back to Bitcoin. There's one thing a little bit different this cycle, which is a bit concerning. See what you guys think of this one. CTO, last time around back in 2020 with the C19 situation, there was a lot of personal savings. People were locked down. They weren't able to blow their cash. So they pumped it into crypto. This time, personal savings rates are at a level as they were right before the global financial crisis in 2008. that means there could be no retail pump this time around for Bitcoin and crypto. CTO, anything to add on this one? Amando, I see you nodding your head here, but this is concerning.
So this is one reason that the trends get so sticky in crypto, because it gets self-reinforcing. I'm sure we've all felt it. Everyone have felt it. If prices start going up, that's when you get the questions, should I buy some Bitcoin? And then it goes up more, and then more people ask, should I buy some Bitcoin? And then it goes up even more, and so on and so forth. And then when it starts going the other way, it gets very sticky and it sticks for a long time. And that's a little bit what we're seeing now. Now we're kind of having this slow bleed of lower lows and lower highs, and then no one is interested, right? No one is asking, like, should I buy some crypto because, maybe it's at support or something. No, they're going to ask when it's going up, not when it's going down or it is boring. So I think that's the bigger picture here. And one of the best advice I ever got was to focus on what the buyers and selling are doing and why they're doing it. Because to answer how much something fundamentally is worth is very difficult, especially for something like cryptocurrency. How much is a Bitcoin actually worth? Perhaps there isn't even an answer to the question, what's the fundamental value of a Bitcoin? But it's easier to understand what are the buyers and the sellers doing and why. And here we can clearly see perhaps the retail people are not buying right now because the price is trending down and they have less money. And then if that one of those two things changes, they will probably start buying, and we can start of seeing that self-reinforcing trend resuming again. So it's a very insightful chart. I hadn't actually seen it like that. And it's very interesting. If this one starts trending up and price starts trending up, I can almost guarantee that people are going to put some of that money into crypto, and it reinforces again. But then I'm not sure how much actually of the buying pressure is coming from retail today and how much is coming from a few large players and the larger investors.
This whole season has been institutional. Mando, regarding money and liquidity, do you foresee an airdrop to retail investors like we saw in the past? Or is it just going to be a Cantillon effect where those closest to the money machine will have all the benefit? I saw you nodding when this chart came up because you see how alarming it is. And what that gray bar means is recession. We are in dire straits here.
Yeah, to put it into like a little bit of perspective, I guess, it does feel as though the US consumer in particular has been maybe under some threat for a while, and it's been a little bit difficult to work out if it's showing up in the data or not. We've seen unemployment rise, although there's been big revisions around that. And actually, I don't know if you've seen at the moment, but the difference between GDP and GDI, if you've done, I guess, basic economics, you'll know that they should equal exactly the same thing. GDP is currently $616 billion above GDI, which may indicate that they're like slightly fudging the numbers there and saying GDP is high. It came out as 3% growth just last week, right? So the US on paper is looking all right, but US consumers, I think it's the highest level of credit card delinquencies right now. You've seen this sort of level of low levels of personal savings rate, and you're starting to see weakness across a lot of different consumer stocks. So I think there's a lot of questions about the US consumer going into this. I don't think we're heading to like a terrible recession, but it's very, very clear that over the last few years, debt has continued to go higher. And because interest rates have gone higher as well, people have less money.
Yep.
People have less money for a lot of this sort of stuff. So I think it's really eaten into that. What I think here is it won't be an airdrop of money, but I do think the drop in rates, given how much debt, both on a public level and on a private level there is globally, that will start to ease some of this personal savings rate.
And double clicking into GDP versus GDI, 26% of all the GDP is created by government spending right now. Government spending. If there was no crazy government spending with the Inflation Reduction Act and everything else, we'd be in a deep, deep, deep recession. And that's just a simple fact of life. Now, it's not all doom and gloom because RektCapital still sees a great September, everybody. September may not be Rektember, and we did have that carry trade dip August 5th. Well, what was impressive to me about August 5th was how fast it happened over the weekend. Crypto got a kick in the teeth, but the V-shaped recovery on the 6th of August was insane for stocks. So we go back to the question, did we have our, like I have this theory that potentially September already happened in August, maybe. And also we saw how fast the recovery was. And yeah, as you say, the economy looks okay. The earnings, the S&P 500 have been pretty good. So from those perspectives, yeah, unemployment is terrible and retail are getting hit hard. But could this be a positive September? Marty?
Yeah, I think you're right. I think everything has been a little bit pre-shadowed the cycle just because of the enthusiasm and the size of the new players. Plus, I think it's an arm race amongst the large players in Wales and now sovereign nations. So I think, yes, we may have seen it. That it's always around the first 4 days of the month. It's really interesting. July 4th, August 4th. Now it looks like September 4th. It seems to be playing out like that. Like I said, I think we could have seen the V-shaped recovery, but I think people should expect it. What I can tell you is there's a monster bar wall at 50,000. Obviously, it's the ETF issuers. So anytime the price of Bitcoin goes anywhere near 50,000, it bounces. I don't see it going under there again. Maybe it'll panic sell to 48 for a second, but I don't see it going lower than that. Anyone who doesn't understand bar walls. It literally can't. There's so much Bitcoin to be bought there in spot limit orders. On the top side, I see 20 billion. So it's the pressure is to go up. Now, when it'll go up, we don't know. I think 90% chance in September we're going to see it happen. That's what I think.
Okay, before we get into altcoins, two other little macro things are happening. We have guaranteed rate cuts in September. Okay, quick round the table. What's the impact of that on crypto? I think it'll be very good for disruption, high beta type stocks. It always is. Other types of institutions, we don't know how financials will do, how healthcare will do, how oil will do, but it'll be good for disruptive stocks. And some people get things confused out there. They think the markets move together. No, there's always a spot of opportunity in the markets. So, Mando, quick to you first. Rate cuts, will that pump crypto or have no effect?
I think it obviously has, as I've just said before, it's a medium term is very, very strong. But generally, when you start to see rate cuts, I just remember being on a trading floor, you normally have huge amount of volatility. This September period is always around that. It's around, you start to get people come back from holiday, you start to get data thick and fast, you start to see volatility. It takes some time to digest, and often that leads to a lot of short-term volatility around that. That being said, that's also why October, when everything starts to sell back down again, starts to be very, very positive. So it's almost impossible to see those two like in isolation. Yeah, September, generally, you come back and you're expecting to see some volatility. It's like a little bit like a roller coaster ride. But by the end of September, and why I've said, I'm a bit more bullish, let's say, on October, is because I think these are all positive for Bitcoin, whichever way you cut it.
Yeah. Okay. And
there's two things, guys. Also, people maybe don't understand. When the Fed raises rates, what they do is they make a 5% guaranteed yield for money. So all the money moves into treasuries. That's the goal, is to suck the money out of the markets, out of risk on. So we've been in that scenario now for this entire 200 days. That when they lower rates, well, it becomes better to move risk on. So we haven't even seen allocation into these asset classes, I don't think. All we've seen is the ETF issuers. Anyway, it's a good point to make.
And a double cut, 30% chance, just wanted to check in on that too, because that's growing all the time. And that's a reflection of how bad things actually are out there. Okay, so full-blown recession, could that have an impact on this bull run? Full-blown global recession. CTO, any thoughts on that?
Yeah, generally, rate cut is positive for speculative assets on short to medium term. Absolutely. But of course, it depends a little bit on why. What is the cause of it and so on. And of course, if you get like an environment of complete disaster, companies going bankrupt, people losing their job, no one has any money, and there's like recession and disaster, of course, that's not good for markets. Absolutely. But I don't I think the rate cuts that I see most likely happening, I feel that should be positive. But of course, if you get a really bad economic climate, that isn't good for speculation. On very long term, this doesn't really matter. I'm very long term. If looking like the technology trend cuts through all this, everything we're talking about here is kind of medium term. If you look at a bigger technology trend, like say personal computers, if you look at Microsoft over 40 years, it cuts through whatever economic climate that has been. If you zoom it out enough, you barely see it. The technology cuts through the economic environment if you zoom out enough. And that we see on Bitcoin also. It's been 15 years and there's been all kinds of environments. If you zoom out and look at, the monthly or the yearly chart, it's just a straight parabola up. And that's also important to remember. But of course, we try to improve the outcome a little bit by trying to understand what happens on the medium term.
Okay. Awesome. Good stuff. Let's jump ahead. There is one other area of concern that's on people's minds. Warren Buffett, he just sold a whole bunch more of Bank of America. He sold a big chunk of his Apple bag. He's now sitting on $278 billion in cash. I call that a melting ice cube. So we do know that his planned sale of Apple was back from April of this year. So he didn't foresee kind of a big global recession or anything else. But why? I'm going to give this one to you, Marty. Why would Warren Buffett sell so much and sit on so much cash and not do anything with it when he's paid to put money to work?
Look, I mean, there's too much speculation around why Buffett does what he does. I mean, he's always done this. This is not new. He does this always. He always exits first into cash, sits back, watches things play out. He's a conservative investor. I think all the fear and stuff is what Warren's doing too. He's going to cash. That's perfectly fine. We can't see it as a bad thing. I like what you said, though. It is a melting ice cube. Like, I'm not sure he's aware of how much purchasing power he's losing every day on that money. But I mean, Apple's the same. They're sitting in a lot of cash. There are a lot of larger companies sitting in cash. Everybody's waiting for the inevitable, which is, the election, guys. I think it's all around the political cycle.
But we know in election years,
Warren is getting ready for that.
Yeah, like the money printers prime during elections always outperform non-election years. Even in September, I ran the numbers. The average loss over the last 100 years during an election year for the S&P 500 is like 0.5%, which is a nothing burger if you're in crypto. Non-election years, it's like sometimes 2.6%. So it's startlingly different.
I mean, the irony is, I believe Apple is a good sell. Personally, I think Apple has run its course. It's running into, regulatory too big to, monopoly issues. Its technology is arguably behind. I think Apple's got security risk. I think Apple is Web 2. Apple has been very anti-Web 3. I predict it right now. I think Apple is at its top.
But I heard they're coming out with a new color for the iPhone, which is groundbreaking.
Right.
Anyway,
I
agree with what Marty said. I agree with what Marty said before, just there. It's like, I think people overlook this, just look into this a little bit too much. Warren Buffett's cash position going into 2008 was 8%, right?
There we go.
And it was around that sort of level for the 5 years before that. I think he is a longer term investor, so he often looks at dividend yield, or let's say overall yield in the S&P versus bonds. And, that's been pretty comparable for the last few years. So maybe there's a reason he moved more into bonds. He's also very old. And a lot of people have said he's been trying to position it more defensively for when the next person takes over. So they have like a clean slate with which to do their portfolio. So
very good point.
I don't know if you should be like reading too much into this. Yeah, I think he is 100% looking though and seeing that bonds offer decent value at 5.5%. They offered great value versus let's say 7% annual average return in the S&P.
In fact, Mando, you just triggered a thought in my little head, and that is, for the last 50 years, he's gone to war with his partner in crime, Charlie Munger. And Charlie died, so he's no longer has that sound wall, to talk and share ideas with. So that could be a big issue as well. Anyway, let's get into crypto. Mando, you kicked this off saying L1s need a new narrative. L1s need something sexy for them to pump. Mert kicked this out over the weekend. Yesterday, I think it was. The 3 biggest Solana releases this year haven't even happened yet. And I'm not including breakpoint announcements, which probably means Firedancer. Bears are in trouble. What could this mean? Marty, I know you track this. Mando, I know you track this. Mando, you're looking for a new narrative for L1s to really kick off that alt season. Tell us what you think this could be.
Look, I think Mert's tweets have been relatively interesting because he also put out a tweet on the weekend, which I put into our shared chat, basically talking about the fact that that we need apps and that infrastructure alone, like we're building better and faster infrastructure, which actually isn't being utilized. Which I thought was interesting to put out these two tweets at the same time, because he's also saying in this tweet, you have to be super bullish about what we've got coming up. And then another tweet's saying we need apps. So maybe this is apps. Maybe he thinks there's going to be huge releases on Solana, which open up the like DApp ecosystem to different things. I think you can be bullish on Solana at being the best at building out infrastructure at the moment and still being the strongest on the adoption cycle. But I do think we sped run through a lot of speculation so far already in 2024. Huge amount of speculation in terms of tokens. Let's say last cycle it was more NFTs. This cycle we're producing 5,000 meme coins a day. Like we are speed running through speculation at an incredible pace. So I think now that's become a little bit more labored, and activity on Solana has dipped. Fees, DEX volume, whichever way you cut it, has dipped. The only thing that's actually increased has been daily active users, which is more linked to the payment side of the business. I can be super bullish on Solana for payments and perhaps different integrations, but I do think right now, without substantial regulation or policy being built, particularly in the US, about what you can do in terms of tokenization, I think that activity is sustained a lot by speculation, and it's kind of dwindled over the last few months, which is why people have been a little bit more somber, I would say, on where Solana can get to. And I think that's fair. I can be super bullish on Solana at building out infrastructure, which gets us to $1 million TPS. But as you said here, we're barely even using 100 TPS. It's not even needed for the things that we have going on. So I think it's a bit of chicken egg. We also need some very strong applications to sustain the bull run in L1s, in my opinion.
Okay, good stuff. So 3 big things. Marty, you track this very closely. What do you think?
I'm not sure. Mert I agree with Mando. Mert is very hot and cold. But I think obviously he's referring to Firedancer. He's been actively testing Firedancer and has seen 50,000 TPS. I've seen actual screenshots of that, so I know it's true. So I would assume it's that a fast, a very, very fast new validator, a second validator, which means Solana no longer will have to ever restart again. Then Agave, obviously we're releasing version 2.0 of Solana, finally going from mainnet to beta to actual mainnet. That's a massive thing. That's an entire new Solana as well. That's with Agave. They're on version 2.0.5 already. So I'm sure those are the first two. The third, I'm not even sure. It could be a Helios thing. Obviously he's the Helios guy, so it could be something to do with Helios. But as far as use cases go, I never really saw Beam coins as anything but a liveness test. Anybody else who thought it was more than that, I think was just kidding themselves. I think at the end of the day, this is a stable coin machine and a real world asset machine, movement of value. And I think the key things that are going to happen is obviously the Cynthia Loomis bill. Congress comes into the Senate comes back to work this month. They're going to vote on that, and there's only one company on that's publicly traded in the US that has their own regulated legal stablecoin, and that's PayPal. And PayPal now has $1 billion, and I think that's just a taste. I think Solana and PayPal's integration is bigger than you realize, and I think we might have an announcement there.
Yeah, there was another.
Go ahead.
Yeah, there was another little announcement that popped in too. Last week, we covered Sony getting into crypto. Now Sony are working with pYTh, building this decentralized finance gaming infrastructure. I can't remember the whole details, but they want to build a much better blockchain experience. And Sony are making very large investments with their Sonium. If I can get that right, it sounds like Ethereum. But now the Sonium stuff is going headlong into the Solana blockchain. They're building an incubation infrastructure as well. Big focus on DeFi, big focus on gaming, powered by pYTH's infrastructure. And we've seen pYTH actually eat into the market share of Chainlink as well. Chainlink has come down from nearly 70% of all Oracle work on crypto down to like 46%, and pYTH has grown. Do you guys track this at all? Do you know anything about Startail and the work that Sony is doing? Is it interesting, or is it just Web 2 playing with crypto.
Yeah, I mean, I know the story in detail. This is all Sota Watanabe. Do you guys know who that is?
Yep.
He was the guy who won Forbes 30 under 30 in Asia for tech. He's like a young Japanese superstar in blockchain. He made that Astar network, which failed. He's been involved in a lot of failed things. But unfortunately, I think Sony might be his chance to really shine. You know, they have a lot of money, very respected brand. And integrating with pYTH's network for data feeds is a good idea. So we'll see. This is his third time, his third shot at something Watanabe. Just Google him if you want to know who he is. Sota Watanabe.
Cool. Good stuff.
I don't put too much into it until there's success, honestly. Until there's success, it's just vaporware to me.
Vaporware, good stuff. All right, now the other thing, just getting through the agenda fast. A lot of people are concerned that, yes, the U.S., and I don't know why all the focus and concern is about the U.S. presidential election, but there is one element of concern, and that is a Harris presidency could kill altcoins. She'd keep Gary Gensler in power, who'd keep the foot on the throat of altcoins and all crypto innovation going forward. Last week, we saw he went after OpenSea, with that, whatever that letter is that they send, the nastygram to these people. CTO, you've been tracking this at all? Do you think the US election could impact alt season, altcoins in general, or is it nothing burger?
I mean, it seems like the two parties have both become more positive to crypto, but while the Republican Party seems more positive at this point. So I do think that the outcome can affect the markets a bit. I'm not American, and of course I don't know, but yeah, I do think it will have some impact on markets. Of course, if the current establishment stays that have been very aggressive until they started feeling some kind of pressure of losing the election on this issue, then if they win and there's 4 years to the next one, yeah, perhaps there's a risk of this. I don't think, though, that anyone is going to kill off the next big technology or one of the big technologies of the current generation. I don't think so.
Yeah,
I don't think it's that doomsday.
We don't have many Gary Gensler fans in here. Mando, what are your thoughts? Could this put alt season in jeopardy? Could it impact the 4-year crypto cycle in any way?
I think it can. That being said, I'm being apolitical about this. Kamala hasn't really given any policy. Like, I've watched interviews with her, and she speaks in pleasantries. Like, I have no idea what she really stands for at this stage. So that being said, I don't know what Kamala will do with crypto. And whenever crypto has maybe tried to have a direct conversation with her, with opinion leaders in the space and key people in the space, she's kind of not there, or it's somebody else. So I have no idea. It seems more likely that she will be worse for crypto than Trump, but you just don't know. Trump's been very, very explicit on the other hand, and seems to be doing various different things in the space, even looking to have this Liberty Financial DeFi project, which I think his family's kind of behind as well. So for me, the known here is that Trump will be more positive for crypto, and for Kamala, she needs to kind of say some stuff, in my opinion.
Yeah, come out with policy and everything else. But the one thing that is interesting is RFK. Marty, tell us about RFK and the impact he could have.
Just before you guys go, I recommend you guys come on Thursday. I've got Perian Boring on my space. I don't know if you know who she is. She's the founder of the most influential crypto lobby right now in DC, which has raised more money than the banking lobby. It could be the turnaround. So you can come ask her questions. She'll be on the space this Thursday at 3:30. She started the Chamber of Digital Commerce, Perian Boring. Awesome. You can ask her. She'll know all these answers on the effect of a Harris win, on the effect of a Trump win.
Remind us in the chat as well, in our little
absolutely
chat.
But I think once again, we have to understand that the SEC is a watchdog, and their job is to identify and scare. All they can do is write letters and threat. Then they're not that's all they can do. When they go at Uniswap, retail go, oh, they're taking down Uniswap. They're being very specific on a specific NFT project, which is Yuga Labs, which did things that were quite risque at the time. And they're pinpointing that. They're not going after NFTs. They're not calling NFT securities. It's the same thing as when they publish a list of companies that potentially are securities. They're not calling them securities. They're just raising the alarm. That's their job. And I think we need to, as crypto investors, get a little bit more mature about this now, not freak out so much. We must understand that the SEC is just a watchdog. Go Google that, what that means. They can only take you to court. The judge still makes the decisions. And with the Chevron change, they're not just going to defer to the SEC's experts. They're going to bring in their own experts. And if they bring in their own experts, these laws will all change. So I think we're in a changing renaissance of regulatory in crypto, and we're going to obviously see the final death blow by Gary Gensler just before he's on his way out. Clearly, he's on his way out. And I wouldn't worry too much about Gary Gensler anymore. In fact, we give him too much credit and give him power. That's the problem. Just ignore him.
Exactly.
Literally ignore him at this point.
What's amazing to me is how slow this has been. OpenSea, this was 2021 when OpenSea was doing all this sort of stuff. In fact, OpenSea as an exchange in NFTs has kind of drifted away. It's still amongst the top, but it definitely wasn't the powerhouse that it was back then. And there were some things which were, I would think they could at least look at for being securities back then.
I agree.
You'd add utility, you'd add things like buybacks, yield, all this sort of stuff that was really close to the bone when it comes to that. I do think what has surprised me though is that they kind of are still a bit heavy-handed for the completely new bit of tech, right? Like they don't seem to do this for other forms of tech. Come in this heavy-handed, like NFTs. Whether strip away all of that, like they could actually be like really interesting bit of tech for a range of different industries. Then come down this heavy-handed on it so early on just seems kind of silly. But yeah, the particular
thing in OpenSea in the Yuga Labs was clearly a security. I mean, understand people, what a security is an agreement between two counterparties. So if one human says I will do this and it's money-wise, and the other person agrees, then there is an agreement. That's the security. Now in crypto, the security is between a human, the user, and a computer. And there is no law. There's nothing in the regulatory to define a counterparty, which is a machine. So they go after the creator of the machine, the creator of the software. They're fishing. And that will all change and it'll unfold. But at the end of the day, Yuga Labs did do some strange things involving two counterparties, which were human beings. The same way XRP sold XRP to institutional investors. Those are securities. And so you must be very clear in what securities are. And when you see the word, understand it. With understanding, you'll get clarity and you'll make wiser investment decisions.
Yep. Cool. Let's do a couple of quick questions from the audience. This is from Full Disclosure Now. What do you see MicroStrategy with Bitcoin at 80K? The answer is about $218. There's the answer, because I've got a ARB model that calculates it for us. There was another fun question too. People are interested what juicy SOL alts you mentioned yesterday. In full disclosure, I nibbled on some pYTh on the background of their growth rate, eating into Chainlink's market share. When you do the market cap of pYTH as Chainlink, it's like trading at 1/7 of the value. And of course, the Sony news, all of this is kind of like, yeah, pYTH could really be something. But just as a very tiny position, everybody. Any alts you guys are looking at right now? Any fast horses? Are you making any recent purchases? Contemplating moving stuff around? Marty, I'm going to start with you because we know what we're both doing behind the scenes of what we did yesterday.
I mean, I'm primarily in my Solana side. I like to hold the native token, hold as much as possible Solana, and then I love JLP. Obviously, I hold ZEUS. I just think ZEUS is sponsored by Anatoly and Munib of Stacks.
And that chart,
they kind of do permissionless bridging. So
CTO,
ZEUS render.
CTO, can you pull up the ZEUS chart, because it is.
No, I mean, it's a typical TGE chart. It's going to come out the gate.
I've been waiting to get into Wormhole and ZEUS, but I just they just keep going down.
Maybe you should wait. It's a good idea. Maybe get the bottom.
Do you have ZEUS there, CTO?
I don't have it actually. Is it ZEUS?
ZEUS USD. It'll be on pYTH under crypto.
Yeah, here it is. Maybe.
Just remember, you need to buy bottoms, not tops. If something is pumping, that's not when you buy it. You buy something that looks like that.
Is it a correct chart?
Yeah, but it looks like it's bottoming a little bit there.
EUS. I know you're right. Is that ZEUS? Yes, it is. Yeah, that is a perfect TG
that's
chart.
right at support here. So definitely well identified.
And pull up Wormhole as well. Just put in WUSD. That's
looks
another
almost the same, probably.
Yep, it is. Yep. But they're both very interesting projects. I just have yet to put my toe in the water, but I've been watching them. Yeah.
Just understand the way TGEs, token generation events, work is they release 10% of the supply up front with the entire intention that those people will sell, and they do. It's airdroppers, influencers, KOLs, early investors, and they always sell, and that's what happens. And that's why TG is effective, because they're only releasing 10% of the supply. So they're waiting to bleed out all the paper hands. It's perfectly normal. I like it. It's where you buy. You buy at the bottom. You don't buy the top. You buy the bottom.
Yeah, and let's talk about this support here line, 128.
So for me, the noteworthy chart this week is definitely this one. It's the Solana TA USD chart. I've had the support here at 127. Can debate if it should be 127, 128, doesn't really matter. But what matters is that price touched this support again, and it bounced today. So that was noteworthy to me. Having said that, I think the easier chart to analyze potentially is the SOL to USD, SOL to BTC chart, which is also holding well above support. That support is at 0.002. And but bounce off support in SOL USD. A lot of people who were interested in SOL up here at 180 and so on. Okay, now it's a bounce at support. That something is at support doesn't mean that it will guaranteed to go up from there. It just means that if you buy at support and it turns out that it fell through, you don't risk very much. If it closes below, it turns out the support didn't hold. Okay, you haven't risked much. While if you buy somewhere in the middle, you would have to hold it a long way down before you can cut it. And if it doesn't go your way, and you would lose a lot of money while you risk very little. This is what we call like risk reward, that the risk is small. And if we believe that Solana has some upside, the reward could potentially be big. We don't need to know the probabilities. No one can answer how many % chances that Solana will become a worldwide success. How many % chance is it that it will be failed or replaced by something else? No one can answer that question. We just know that it's a possibility that it becomes a mega success. There's a possibility that something else takes over. That's always the case. And then you can kind of calculate. What you can calculate is how much you risk on the downside and how much potential you have on the upside. That's the risk reward. And then if you are diligent and execute on your trade, cut your losers quickly, hang on to the winners. And that's generally how you systematically can make money in the markets.
And last week, I actually put my coffee cup on the line. I said, we typically have a big run into breakpoint every year, a lot of pent-up excitement about announcements. We know there's 3 huge announcements coming, and there's more coming as well. So that could have a big impact here. So I love that support line, but we disagree, CTO. My support is 128. Yours is 127. We're different by $1. Now, can you bring up the ETH BTC as well, CTO? Because this question came in from Stratocaster. Mangold, people are still holding ETH, and they want to know, does it have legs? Good. Mando, what do you think of this chart?
I said it maybe 2 or 3 months ago, right? Like I felt as though people will keep on comparing things to ETH, and I maybe got some flack for just saying you should just be looking at SOL and Bitcoin. Like that's the chart here. SOL BTC, ETH I think is going to underperform for a little bit. I'll be honest in saying over the next 3 weeks, my portfolio is a little bit defensive right now. Like it's mainly in JLP, which is still 35% stable. It's actually got some ETH in it. It's got 10% ETH, 10% Bitcoin, and 35% Solana. I want to be taking more risks. So over the next 4 weeks, I'm probably going to be getting out of JLP. And I've been just kind of umming and erring whether to go all into Solana or all into Bitcoin. I think I'm going to go all into Bitcoin, if I'm honest, just because I think the risk reward there is going to be slightly stronger. ETH just hasn't really come up in my conversation. Like there's been some random FUD around it this week because like the foundation's been selling all this sort of stuff, but it's just quite simply, I think there's some sort of thing which I even saw today, so don't 100% quote me on it, but ETH L1 fees are down over 90% since the recent upgrade which happened in the spring. Over 90%. Now, whether you think that the long-term bullish case for ETH is with L2s or not, like it's not hitting that scale right now, which means that the L1 and a lot of the value is not going to the ETH L1, and I think that is a problem. And because a lot of also the speculation hasn't been happening on ETH this cycle, it's mainly happened on Solana. I don't think people are using ETH as money really either for like buying NFTs or buying meme coins. So I think it's still a very difficult play for me. It's definitely not the one I was considering, even when I want to dial up risk ahead of the election. Like I've said a few times, it didn't come into the question.
Yeah, another quick one regarding CleanSpark. You don't sell miners at the bottom. You wait for a big mega pump on Bitcoin, and then the miners outperform Bitcoin. That's when you exit, not before. So yeah, miners are always cutthroat. Never have more than a 5% allocation to Bitcoin miners. That's my take on that. Any other quick, cool questions coming in here? If anybody see any questions.
Some interesting things, guys. You know, Russia started using crypto yesterday for cross-border digital transactions. That's a huge thing. Now, I don't know whether that's hostile to the US because it competes with SWIFT and bypasses sanctions, but that's an interesting new user of crypto. Also, Bank of Canada is dropping rates by 25 basis points to 4.25%, probably on the 4th. It's another big thing. We've got that Fed beige book coming out this week. ZEUS jobs report. It's a big week. Cardano's hard fork is this week. Arbitron's upgrade. A lot of things happening.
Okay, let's talk about this. First of all, L2 volume is up, but it's all Base. That's true. Base has nearly 880,000 daily active users. When you add up all of the daily activity, all of the transfer volume, etc., L2s plus ETH, it still is a little bit lackluster. And you're right, it's no benefit to Ethereum. There was another
on Base. This is something I cannot get to the bottom of.
What's the question, man?
They're not doing memes.
There is hundreds. There's thousands of new pairs on Uniswap each day. No one in the broader crypto community ever speaks about Base memes. Like Base memes had a season a few months ago, but it hasn't. So I'm not sure what is going on Base. Does anyone know? Like I'm just kind of a bit confused by it all. Like they have.
I have my theories and theses on Base. I think the second that Base is allowed to regulatory-wise legally have their own token, they'll get off Ethereum. It'll be a Base.
So you think it's just it's
might be the death of Ethereum. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't really know it because people say, "Oh, it's memes and stuff," but like it's not. At least nothing of any value. I think things are being created. I think I've looked at before, and it's to do with Sora, which is like an NFT style platform as well. But I don't think, although there's a lot of activity happening on Base, there's that much value. And I don't know if there's 866,000 users. Like something tells me even about that's kind of crazy.
Yep, I agree. I think Base is a stablecoin network.
Who out of any of your communities mentioned Base?
Yep. That is a good. I agree with you, Mando.
So I'd like to dive into that a little bit more because it does.
You can look on Twitter. Active arguments and discussions with there's internally within Ethereum L1 and L2 right now. The debate is happening. Like all the value is moving to the L2s. What is Ethereum? Why do we need it? You said you would fix it. Well, then Ethereum says, well, we can't. This committee hasn't decided, and then the Arbitrum committee says, well, we're ready. And the Ethereum says, well, you're going to have to wait. And then Optimism says, well, we already made the changes. And then Arbitrum says, but we found bugs, and you see how it works. There's just a lot of councils, human beings, and human beings are risky. They're impatient. They make bad decisions, and they very often make decisions from a position of power. And so the layered stack creates that human risk. and we're watching it play out in real time. They're just
So
too dependent on each other.
This is an interesting one. We know Firedancer theoretically could hit 1 million TPS. It's already last year did 1.2 million in a test environment, but now there's this BSV Terra node looking to deliver 1 million TPS. I've never heard of BSV, if that's that fake fork.
That's Bitcoin Satoshi Vision. That's one of the forks.
Yeah. Oh yeah. But I mean, it's a scam coin. So be careful what you read out there on the internet is what we would probably advise here. Not that we do advice at all. Let me see. Any other?
With regards all statistics, guys, if any published statistics about performance, if they're not in a real world situation, like in production, they're not true. I can download a blockchain right now on my computer and run 50,000 TPS in a test application. It means nothing. Make sure it's in live production.
Good.
Go ahead. Sorry.
And I know that there's some other stuff happening. It's just one of these times old season is on pause. Bitcoin is chop solidating. We need the mothership to move first before these alts do, and that's just the way of the world. Bitcoin has been pretty strong. It's up $1,400 so far since last night. So it's not a bad move. It's recovering a little bit. But I don't know. Any other good questions here? Any final thoughts from the team?
I fear that we're going to be doing this chat again next week. And maybe the week afterwards.
We're not going to be on the moon. We're not going to be wearing our moon boots.
In 6 months, guys, we feel it just as much as you do. But
people are impatient. It's just one of those things. And I think Marty and I have, and the CTO, all the same thing. When you see things fall into your traps or come down to those support lines, that's when you do kind of a little bit of DCA on steroid action. You grab them, like the risk reward that CTO showed with the chart at 127, 128. It's good. It's good. And I know that we both went long Solana last night, Marty and I, correct?
Yeah, I'm in at 120. I'm 129.25 at 5x, considerably large position. So we'll see. Just so you know, people, a liquidation price at 5x right now is around $100. So as long as the price remains above 100, you'll be safe.
Exactly. Keep it I like to be just under the $100 number, like 99. So I can sleep a bit better at night. And never been liquidated, fortunately. Touch wood. Hopefully it never happens.
Lucky
All
you.
Right. So what's happening with the predictions for next week? I think, Mando, we heard yours. We'll be here next week. But like the whole story today is, will September be Rektember? Or will we get away unscathed? Or could we have that that big vicious dip, wreck a lot of people, buy that dip, and then we bounce back?
It's also like very well flagged that there could be a dip in September, which just also means that any dip will probably get bought. So one thing I would say is, don't get caught away. We'll probably see some volatility. We'd like naturally do in September. That could mean, Solana does go down to like 120 and then bounces back or something like that. Like you saw when it broke support last time, it can break it by a decent amount and then rebound straight back through it pretty quickly. So don't be surprised if you see some wicks around that sort of stuff. But yeah, I think this is a good time to buy. Like I said, I'm telling you what I'm doing. I had a defensive portfolio for the last 5 months in JLP. I'm now moving it into just straight Bitcoin, most probably straight Bitcoin.
Good.
I mean, September for me is just a massive month just on the macro, because we've got the huge carry trade rollover to the Q3 October contract on September 20th, that Friday. We've got the rate cut starting, which is going to be just a massive amount of volatility, like Mando says. Just expect crazy volatility around those days. Look for the V-shaped recovery. Be prepared for anything. So if it drops in the V, you buy the bottom, you long the bottom. If not, you slowly DCA in on every dip, and it's going to work. September's going to be perfect. We're here to prepare you, and you are prepared. So everything's fine.
And we know what happens after Rektember. We get October. CTO, what are your plans?
Yeah, so looking at the chart, we're right in the middle of this triangle, but I feel positive because of the yields breakdown. So I feel that we have a positive environment ahead of us. Of course, the confirmation would be that this is ending. that this trend of lower highs, lower lows finally ends. That would be the confirmation I'll be looking for. We kind of had some signs of that last week, didn't play out. So we, look again. And if this starts ending, we start breaking out here, that would be very good risk reward, as would be another dip down to these levels. Like we had this very big week, as Marty pointed out, there was a lot of buying interest when we fell down towards 50K last time. And there would be support expected there. So that would also be another good opportunity. Now we're kind of right in the middle.
Yeah, and Mr. 100 just bought again, by the way. He bought 600 Bitcoin in the last 24 hours, and he likes to buy at 58K. And the theories now, like my theories have always been, it's not an upbit cold wallet. It's not the behavior of a centralized exchange cold wallet. It's either a massive baller, it's either Michael Dell, it's either Tether or a sovereign out of the Middle East. Of those five, where do you guys place your bets? Final question. Mando, you're smiling. Is it Tether?
I think it's a sovereign wealth fund.
Okay. But the amount that they have, their bag size, is very close to what Tether theoretically would have.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
But they buy and sell, don't they? Does Tether been selling?
No. Well, no, they transferred, I think, 600 Bitcoin to another wallet or something, or
right, okay.
a big chunk. But no, they're stacking consistently since the beginning of the year. And especially on dips. Their DCA strategy was very weak at the beginning. Now they're literally every dip sub 60K they buy. Marty, who do you think Mr. 100 is?
I'm pretty sure it's Qatar.
Qatar.
Yeah, I mean, if you follow Qatar, this week they just proposed their first vote on a foundational framework for digital assets. So I think they've been accumulating, they're preparing, and there will be an announcement this year.
Excellent. And CTO, who do you think Mr. 100 is? So we've got two sovereign wealth funds here. You think it's Tether?
I have no idea. Guys. It's not me. Unfortunately.
We got 420 Empire.
We've ruled out CTO.
Yeah. Awesome. So one less.
One less. Anyway, it's been a great show, everybody. Thank you all for joining. Again, just stay patient. The most important rule in investing is not to be shaken out, like Marty said. The markets are designed to wreck your head. Do not let that happen. Stay strong. Stay sound mind. And any good dips, if you have any cash, I have a heavier than normal cash position. I'm hoping, and this sounds really bad, but I'm hoping for that nasty wick in September. I'll be up 24/7 waiting for that dip and fingers on the trigger, and I'll dangle my limit orders. And that's the plan. So I think you guys are all on the same page.
Me too.
I mean, we're all in this position because we were patient. If you're patient, you'll get in this position where you have dry powder to buy the next V-shaped recovery and so on. Yeah. So just learn from us. Patience is the most important thing.
Yeah. I don't have the courage to go short at the bottoms, but I'm hedged in some other equity positions. And that's all she wrote, everybody. Thank you to Bitcoin Maxi Mike, and thank you for everybody who joined and all the lovely support. And there's no toxicity in these comments. There's no hatred. Thank you to the mods as well to keep it all clean. Whoops. I didn't mean that.
7,000 viewers. It's pretty high live.
Yeah, James, really, so much respect for you. This is such a nice, clean, hygienic show. Really nice. Your followers are lovely.
We have T&D Tesla. Keep it all clean for us right here. And we have, of course, Sean Donnelly from Liverpool, who's a big fan of Mando. So
love it.
Thank you, guys. All right.
Adios.
Enjoy your life today. Have a great week. Thanks. Be safe. Stay strong.
Adios.
Bye.
Thank you, everyone.